We're going to go to Tamar in Seattle, Washington. How you doing today?
Good, David. How you doing?
Pretty good. We're going to be going to the break here in just a second. But you had a question, and I figured out that I could actually give you the answer and all the data fairly quickly. You get my email?
Yeah, I got that.
Okay. So basically, we'll talk about this more when we get on the other side of the break. But we wanted to look at what the short situation was in the financials with all these financials kind of sitting right at support. We'll answer that question when we come back with Tamar. And we're back, and hopefully Tamar is still there. You still there?
Yep, I'm still here.
Okay. So I sent you the list. We were talking about short interest in the XLF. Maybe you can explain your question to our listeners a little bit more, and I can answer.
Sure. So my question was what was the percentage of shorts in the U.S. financials, like more specifically the larger U.S. banks? And then also based on, I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, but last year when they had the stress test, bank stress test last summer, and they passed, they allowed the banks to use the excess reserves that they had over the years to repurchase stock. So I was kind of curious, based on just the price action or the weakness of the financial sector, also the possible high percentage of shorts, and just where they're trending now, that I thought maybe today or yesterday that the banks would have bounced back or started bottoming out, and then once the stress test results were announced, and if they allowed them to buy back shares again, that would boost not only financials but try to lift up the broader markets in general, and especially with the low volume and the holiday, that some of the shorts will just get their face ripped off pretty much either tomorrow or next week.
I don't know if you're going to say get your face ripped off. Do I think that they're going to be backpedaling a bit? The answer is yes. The thing I want to look at in what I sent you was the days to cover. The short percentage can kind of be moved around depending on what is and in out in the available float. So I like to look at the days to cover. It tends to tell me a much bigger idea, which is how big are the entrances and the exits on that stock. And, you know, we've got AFL, which has got 5 days to cover. You've got BIN with 5 days to cover, BBT with 3, BK with 4, BlackRock with 2. That's not so bad. But I'm thinking if you wanted to pick off some of these, in fact, one of them down here I've got to look at later is Zion. I've seen this bank around a lot of times. This one's got 15 days to cover. I don't know what's going on with it, but if it starts heading up, it could rip somebody's face off.
Yeah,
So
I noticed that one, yeah.
I would look at that. T. Rowe Price, 8 days to cover. Any of these ones with like 5 or so. Where's another one out here? PBCT. I'll have to look through some of these tonight. But, you know, even when these things get going, they're not like semis. So could you get a nice run out of these? I think you can. Can you make some nice money? I think that they're, especially, I don't know if you were listening to me as I was going through the charts, but I mean, the risk reward isn't going to ever get any better in the financials than right here. You got a ton of them testing previous lows on very light volume. You got some of these things with some decent days to cover on them, and you're going into a lighter and lighter volume. If anything does happen, you've got, I think, a little to the downside and a whole lot to the upside. You got fun buying on your side for the next, well, actually probably through next Friday. So if you want to consider this like a free roll, I think you're pretty close, unless there's a bank on this list that's going to have earnings. I wouldn't look at that. But I didn't see anything when I looked through everything next week. It's a pretty light week.
Yeah.
So I think it's a free roll.
I think they have a while off, another couple, maybe another week or two before they start doing their earnings, I think.
So you know, for me, I'm not extremely bearish. Charts look good. The volume's decreased. You got fun buying, and you're going into a light volume week. And those are all the kind of things where you individually in these stocks, you might get a few of these things really skyrocketing, but probably not going to see the XLF going to the moon. It may go up, But there'll be a handful of these things. People probably too short. They'll get their hands cut in the cookie jar. I'm not long any indexes today. I ended up buying a bunch of individual stocks, most of them because people were way too short these things, and I'm pretty sure that at least the S&P cash is going back up to 2750. So I would just pick off this list the individuals like Zion and these others that are 6 or 8, and start picking out and looking at the charts and finding which ones look the best out of that, because I think you're going to get a much better bang for the buck. Are you already in the XLF?
So I bought calls yesterday evening on Citibank,
Okay.
and it's doing fairly well today. It's up 2.2% right now.
What's the symbol? Just straight C, isn't it?
Yeah, see.
Let's take a look at that real quick.
I just entered
I like
a
it.
position in JP Morgan this morning.
Okay. I like it. I mean, you've got 29 million shares back on April 2nd, almost 30 million shares, 66.22. You're going to close back above that today. So you're back into the trading range. And the highest, you got 13 million shares today. Highest volume was 21 million shares. So you got a third less volume back into these lows. I do like this pattern too, which is on my power law vector indicator number. I would have liked to seen this number off the 73.30 be a little less, but it's still significantly less than the move up from May 3rd to May 14th. So not a bad looking chart. You're back into the trading range, and I think you got a free roll for till next Friday. So when are your calls?
They are July 20 calls.
Okay.
I usually will hold them anywhere from, I'd say on a short term, if I'm not comfortable with it, a day to a week.
I would say that you probably are going to do fairly decent with these, but I mean, if it's really not moving by 10:30 on Friday morning next week, then I think it's time. You don't probably want to take the bath of them taking out the premium for that next weekend. But other than that, looks like an interesting trade. Let me know how you do.
That's fine. I appreciate it. Thank you.
You bet. Thanks for the call.